What's something people misunderstand way too often? How statistics work and how easily they can be manipulated into showing what someone wants it to show. Bill Burr bit on statistics was hilarious. Want to go to scuba diving with me? Quote, no. Why? 90% of shark attacks happen in shallow water. Yeah, because that's where the people are. The same thing when people say you're most likely to die within X miles from home. Yeah, because you are often home or close to it. Statistically, there are 2.267 popes per square kilometer living in Vatican City. That's the highest population density of any country in the world. Just because I don't want to spend all my free time with you doesn't mean I don't like you. I just enjoy being by myself sometimes. Tax brackets. All your pay is not in one bracket. This shit drives me up the fucking wall. Yes, you do want to get paid more. My tinfoil hat theory is that big huge companies spread that rumor so their workers won't try to fight for raises. Edit. Yes, we know about the benefits cliff. That's a different thing altogether, and I personally wish we could revise our social program so that doesn't happen. Incognito mode. All it does is it deletes your search history and cookies when you close out. It doesn't hide your IP or delete downloads. People at my school depend on incognito thinking it gives them privacy from the IT department. Boy, are they wrong. I was one of them until I realized. Was more careful. Then watched the demise of those who didn't realize and got yelled at by IT. What scientific theory means and how it relates to actual practical uses of science. Laws describe and theories explain. Semicolons and commas. Semicolons are great. They combine separate but related clauses. Commas are useful in providing clarity, improving sentence flow, and creating lists. Beautiful. Also, semicolons can be used to separate items in a list of lists. For example, there were 4 sheep. One was black, fluffy, and loud. One was small and mangy. One was well-mannered, quiet, and white as snow. And the last one was named Phil. Edit. Thanks for my first silver. Glad to spread some semicolon appreciation. Edit 2, typo. Edit 3, wow. Super didn't expect this insignificant little semicolons comment to get this much attention. Thank you all for sharing my punctuation appreciation. May the grammar gods bless you all with never dangling participles and properly punctuated paragraphs. How dangerous driving while really tired can be. Being behind the wheel of a 3,000 pounds machine when you have trouble keeping your eyes open is extremely dangerous, even if you're completely sober. I made the mistake of driving on no sleep and ended up nodding off and waking up in a small ditch. Thankfully, the small highway I was on was pretty empty, so I didn't end up hurting anybody. But it really opened my eyes just how dangerous it is. Yep, friend of mine killed her partner and little brother driving tired. Got a suspended prison sentence for a few years. Lost her hair on one side due to the stress and depression of it all. And eventually killed herself. Oversimplified because I hate thinking about how tortured she must have been. But all that could have been avoided by just taking a break driving tomorrow. 3 of my relatives were killed by a semi-driver who fell asleep at the wheel while hauling explosives. Happened decades ago. It's highly regulated now. The only person who survived that crash saw it coming and bailed out. If jumping out of a car speeding down the highway is the only way to survive, you bet that shit is dangerous. Someone can have depression but still look happy, or laugh. Many undiagnosed with a mental illness don't get treatment precisely because they find excellent ways of covering it up. Source. Been there. Done that. Introversion. Introverts are not misanthropes or shut-ins that hate being around people and hate talking. At least, that's not how they're defined. Introversion means that you recharge by being alone. Conversely, extroverts recharge by being around people. There are introverts who are social butterflies. But they're introverts because their social battery runs out after so long and they need to relax by being alone. Point is, Introversion equals antisocial or asocial. I bring it up because I'm a bit of a social butterfly, but at heart I'm an introvert, and most people don't understand that. Also, for many introverts, it is not being around people necessarily that is draining. It is interaction. For instance, an introvert may be an excellent public speaker, or theatrical performer, or attend a crowded event with no effect on their social battery, but when drawn into conversation the battery begins to drain. I'm generally a quiet introvert, so people assume I'm shy or have stage fright. Couldn't be further from the truth. The media intentionally appeals to your emotional bias to manipulate your opinions. So do politicians, religious leaders, sales personnel, etc. That your yearly raise is not actually a raise, instead an adjustment for inflation. Joke's on you, I didn't even get that this year. Cries in retail. If you're not getting a yearly raise, you're getting a yearly income cut. Your image of the devil. Heaven and hell is not from the Bible. It's from the Divine Comedy. Everyone has these images because of fan fiction, essentially. In addition, the demon goat image of Satan is actually a pagan god Baphomet, not Lucifer, though the Catholic Church accused this image as of being Satan, which is why they're closely associated. Edit. The Catholic Church was not the one who correlated Baphomet and Satan as being the same, but an occultist in the 19th-20th century. This is a pretty good one, but I would add that it's also influenced by the association the Hebrews had between effigies of Baal, anthropomorphic bull, and Satan, and the general low regard for goats. Jesus' parable of the sheep and the goats. The circles of hell concept is also a product of Dante's. The customer is always right applies to products. Like, if pink monsters sell out faster than the rest, clearly it's more popular and should be stocked more frequently since the customer is always right. Edit. So, I got a lot of people saying this is a common Reddit myth. More importantly, I want to draw attention to the Amazon rainforest. It is on fire, and the environmental ignorance of the 45 administration is doing nothing to help this. Vote blue this election cycle. Vote Democrat. POC and women lives depend on it. Came to say this. If a customer is screeching that the customer is always right, they're never fucking right. You can't pause an online game. Reddit gets it. Moms don't. Mom here. I've learned how much longer until you can quit, pause, hide. Bread is not good for ducks. The swan at my local lake had to be moved because the constant diet of bread kept making him sick. 180 degrees versus 360 degrees, and it annoys me every time. Was once in a meeting. Boss said, "We're going to do a 360 on this." One dude couldn't keep his mouth shut, said, "So we're just going to keep things as they are." Boss was like, "No, didn't you hear me? We're doing a 360 on this project." Fast forward 3 days and the dude was looking for a new job. Boss still doesn't grasp it, and no one will correct him ever again. Edit. Basically, boss is stubborn as hell and doesn't take advice at all. It's his way or the highway. There was no animosity really. Just dude couldn't work under a guy whose word is the law without any leeway. And no one gives boss suggestions, corrections again, cause it just puts boss in a corner and he doubles down. Boss was owner as well, I should say, so he can run his company how he wanted, even to the loss of good people. This was many years ago, so can't remember the specifics of the meeting I referenced. Silence doesn't necessarily mean agreement. Kindness doesn't necessarily mean that he interested in you romantically. The meaning of the word theory. That's because theory legitimately has multiple definitions depending on context, and people confuse the general use definition, synonymous with conjecture, as applying to the much more rigid definition used in science and mathematics. Though lay prevalent, it's equally annoying when others pretend that the latter definition is the only one that exists. Love is about more than feelings. Especially in a marriage, it's a commitment that one will continue to intentionally respect, protect, and value the other, despite the current status of one's feelings. My wife and I are looking at our 10th anniversary in the not-too-distant future. We married young but spent a lot of time learning about love and marriage from people much smarter than us. My feelings towards my wife are nothing like what they used to be. They're different, stronger, much closer. One of my favorite quotes: "Love is a temporary madness. It erupts like an earthquake and then subsides. And when it subsides, you have to make a decision. You have to work out whether your roots have become so entwined together that it is inconceivable that you should ever part. Because this is what love is. Love is not breathlessness. It is not excitement. It is not the promulgation of promises of eternal passion. That is just being in love, which any of us can convince ourselves we are. Love itself is what is left over when being in love has burned away. And this is both an art and a fortunate accident. Your mother and I had it. We had roots that grew towards each other underground. And when all the pretty blossom had fallen from our branches, we found that we were one tree and not two." From Captain Corelli's mandolin. Silicone and silicon are not the same thing. Isn't one the rubbery stuff and the other the conductor in computers? How to remember. Silicone is indeed rubbery and can be shaped into jiggly things. You can make a silicone with it. Silicon is a hard, gray, and humorless element. It is silicon. Con, meaning light, not silly at all. The difference between being acquitted and being innocent. Example: I think O.J. Simpson killed his wife, but I think the jury returned the correct verdict. Why? The state of California failed to prove beyond a reasonable doubt that he killed her. The jury isn't asked did he do it? They're asked did the state prove he did it? The state did not prove it. As an aside to this, the counsel on both sides isn't there because they believe the accused is guilty, not guilty. They are there to present their side's case to the fullest, even if a prosecutor personally thinks the person is not guilty. They can't just go, "Well, I don't think he did it, so I'm just not going to present anything." Likewise, even if your attorney thinks you're guilty as sin, that's not really relevant. They're there to present your case. It is the jury's place to take in all the presented information and make a decision. A prosecutor isn't the devil for presenting a case against someone who turns out to be not guilty. And a defense attorney isn't the devil for presenting a case for someone who ended up being guilty. They're doing their job to make sure the system works. Now, if the system works in reality is another story. That you can handpick create statistics to prove any point. In addition, most statistics make a correlation between only a couple variables when there are often hundreds in play, which causes people to draw the wrong conclusions. Anything medical. As a healthcare professional, it can be interesting to hear a layman's explanation of an injury or a disease process. Shit gets wild when the dictionary people include a new word. It's not because they think it's cool. It's because people use it in real life, and some people need, you guessed it, a dictionary to understand what it means. So get mad at yourself when bling or whatever becomes a word because you people as a society started using it, not the dictionary employees as individuals. The difference between type 1 and type 2 diabetes. I always feel super offended when someone find out I have type 1 diabetes and assume I am fat. Or the assumption that only heavier people develop type 2. My dad, who has always maintained a healthy BMI, is a type 2 diabetic. His developed shortly after he finished chemo, radiation. Correlation versus causation. Grammar and how percentages work. If something increases by 10%, and then another 10% is added, that does not mean it's the original number plus 20%. It's the original number plus 10%, plus 10% of the original number increased by 10%. Let's say you got 100. That increases by 10% for 110. Another 10% is added. Now you have 121. Did I get that right? Yes. You add 10 to 100, because 10 is 10% of 100, and get 110. The end 10% of that is now 11. And when you add 11 to 110 you get 121. Thank you so much for watching and have a good day.